if the choice is between right and right, and you diligently give God the opportunity to speak or to intervene, and you still can't find yourself, with a sense of what God wants to do, when it's right and right, you can't go wrong.
Yeah. Hey, welcome to this episode of the God Seeker Podcast. So glad that you joined us today. My name's Joe Martin Jr., and my guest today is Steve Burgess. Pastor Steve, so great to have you on the podcast today. Thank you for joining us.
Pastor Joe, great to be here.
You are the senior pastor, along with your wife, of C3 Grow in Auckland, New Zealand. You guys are members of the C3 Global Executive Team, which we're going to talk about that in just a few minutes. But your home church, C3 Grow, is a multi-site church with 2 campuses in Auckland and 1 in Fiji.
Yep, Suva, Fiji.
Yeah, Suva, Fiji. You returned to Auckland in 2019 to become the senior pastor of C3 Grow, but you previously had served as the C3 Pacific Regional Director for 10 years until the beginning of this year.
Yes.
You're married to Dawn.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, in September, it'll be 20 years.
20 years.
She made it. That's great. Your parents to Sasha, who's 15, Lucy, who's 13, and Wesley, who's 12. So glad to have you today.
Great to be here.
Man, it's so good. We've been together the last few days. We were in Atlanta for the America's regional meeting. All those leaders from all over the U.S., Canada, and South America. It was such a great time together.
Amazing.
And you've been here over the weekend. Thanks so much for being here.
It's been so great to be here. Great to be in your church. Great to be in Dallas. My first time here.
Yeah.
So we've just had a blast.
Do you get to come to the U.S. much?
Maybe once or twice a year. I mean, probably going forward more often.
Yeah.
Over the last few years, my focus has been more in the Pacific and in Asia. But going forward, once or twice a year. We're a long way from the U.S. In New Zealand, but then again, we're a long way from everywhere.
Yeah. And when you're away, who looks after the church? Dawn?
Dawn takes on a leadership role there. We've also got a great staff who we're very, very fortunate to have a deep bench, and the church is gracious in releasing me.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I always like to get started just to, really just talking about your background, how you grew up, where you grew up. Of course, it's fascinating to us as Americans to hear about somebody who grew up, born, raised on an island. And New Zealand's not small. I mean, it's a big island, but an island nonetheless.
It's an island. It's about 4 million people.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, it was less than 3 million. But I grew up in Auckland, which is the main city, not the capital city, but the main city.
Yeah. Christchurch is the capital.
Oh, Wellington is the capital.
That's right, yeah. And so, but you spent quite a bit of time in Christchurch.
Yes, 10 years in Christchurch.
Yeah.
So we went down to Christchurch. Initially, we were going to go down for 18 months and establish a church, appoint some pastors, and then return home to Auckland. However, very quickly, we figured out that we were actually supposed to stay longer.
Yeah.
And so we told our then senior pastors that we were intending to stay. He said, look, if you stay, then the church is in your hands. It's your responsibility. And we said, yep, that's fine. By that point, we'd had a pretty good start.
Yeah.
And then a week later, we had the earthquakes.
Yeah.
Which would have been a perfect time to leave. But also, we kind of felt like we didn't want to be the captain that was on the lifeboat first,
Yeah.
So we ended up staying for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And we just got to a point where our kids were at the age where we had to make a decision to come home, because if we didn't decide to do that then, we really needed to commit for another 10 to 15 years to being in Christchurch.
Yeah.
Love Christchurch.
Yeah.
It was a great place to raise our kids early on. The people there were warm, great place to live.
Yeah. And give us an idea about how far from Auckland is Christchurch. What's the distance?
It's about a two-hour flight.
Right.
It's on another island. So Auckland is in the North Island. Christchurch is in the South Island.
Yeah.
So we're separated by the Cook Strait. So it's about 2 hours. You could probably drive there in about sort of 14 to 16 hours.
Yeah.
Including the ferry across. So everywhere in New Zealand is relatively close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to get back to that, but first I just want to start, hey, how were you raised? And tell us a little bit about your childhood. I know yesterday you said something that was quite funny. You said that we're 17 hours ahead, but 17 years behind.
Yeah.
Well, let's get started. I want to talk a little bit about all that.
Yeah, I mean, New Zealand was a great place to grow up. And we are very far removed from the rest of the world. In fact, growing up, I mean, New Zealanders are very intrepid, but growing up, it was, apart from Australia, which is our nearest neighbour, the rest of the world almost seemed like a fiction to us. I mean, we got media coming over from America and coming over from Britain, but you know, we really do feel like a very isolated place at the end of the world.
So you guys are aware of that?
Yes, very, very much so.
Yeah.
Yes.
And when the media that you get, like growing up, 2 channels, 3 channels. I mean, when I grew up, we had 4 channels. So,
Right.
But what about you guys?
We had 2 TV channels. Not a lot of local content, so a lot of it was coming in from, as I say, America, Britain, and then I think we got our 3rd channel, TV channel, around about when I was about 8, maybe 8 to 10. We got our 3rd channel. But we mainly would run around outside.
Yeah.
It was very safe, very safe.
Yeah.
I was from a blended family, which was quite uncommon then. I had some big brothers, big sisters. They had basically moved out of home by the time I was 5, 6. And so my parents were both divorced and had remarried. They had tried their luck in kind of producing inferior offspring, and then they finally got it right and perfected it with me.
So you were born into a blended family, but really you is almost like an only child, right?
Basically, yes.
Yeah.
That's right. That's the diet.
Yeah. And so, what are some of your earliest memories from?
Yeah, I mean, I actually had a car accident when I was 5. I was coming home from school. It was actually the first time that I can remember someone praying for me. So I only have a handful of memories from ages 0 to 6. And one of the memories is that on the day that I had this accident, we were invited along to a Salvation Army after school party. And, you know, that was a big deal to a kid from Papakura, which was where I was. And so we went along to this party. I remember I dropped my apple and got given 2 cookies, which I thought was a win.
Yes.
And then I remember sitting down on a mat, and this is the first time, as far as I know, that someone had prayed for me. This lady prayed, "God, would you keep these kids safe?" Mm-hmm. We walked home. I can't remember this, but we walked home, and for whatever reason, they wanted to take us back to the school, I suppose, so we would have our bearings. And as I was crossing the pedestrian crossing, a drunk driver came through and collected me. And it was going 100 kilometers per hour. I'm not sure what that is in miles.
60.
Yeah, it was going fast.
Mm-hmm.
Just collected me. And I flew down the street, airborne, landed on my head, had a lot of, I was really busted up. I was in a bad way.
How old were you?
5.
Wow.
5 or 6.
Yeah.
Yeah. And at that point, a string of miracles happened.
Yeah.
So, number one, there was a person from another chapter of the Salvation Army. So not from the Papakura chapter, but from the Clevedon chapter, which was nearby. He was out for a run, and he just happened to come across me at the right time.
Yeah.
In those days, not everybody knew how to give roadside assistance, but he did. And he was running, and he felt like something told him, or someone told him, or God told him to take a different route. And so he did, and he just so happened to come across me. And he resuscitated me, cleared my airways, that sort of stuff. And then, because we lived quite a way away from the hospital where we were, but there had been a call out. An ambulance was called out, but then wasn't required, and was heading back to the hospital empty. And then just happened upon me, got me in the hospital, got me to the hospital.
Yeah.
When I turned up at the hospital, they said I was dead on arrival. They resuscitated me again, and the doctor said to my mother, if he wakes up, he's going to be a vegetable. You don't say that anymore, but it was 1986, you know.
Right.
So they said he probably won't walk, he probably won't talk, he may not actually have any cognitive function.
Wow.
And then 3 days later, I woke up from the coma, and the first thing I said was, "Where's the third line?" Because I'd been counting the lines as I went across the pedestrian crossing. So 1, 2, hit. And then 3 days later, where's the third line?
Wow.
So my cognitive function was all there. But I was pretty busted up. I spent 6 months in the hospital.
Yeah.
I had a fractured femur, I had massive head injuries. My right leg was completely shattered. I needed to learn how to walk again, which was just very difficult. But, you know, eventually fully recovered, and yeah. So that was a big event
Steve,
in my life.
What do you remember before that event? Do you remember much? Did it do something to your memory before? Or?
It basically cleaned my clock. So I can remember the people from the Salvation Army coming to invite us to the party. I can remember being at the party, and I can remember maybe one other random memory is watching the old school Batman TV series, eating spaghetti with our dog.
Yeah.
Everything else basically just got wiped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Even your earliest memories of growing up, all that stuff, gone.
Yeah, no, those are my only memories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Amazing. So you recover. Maybe what did it take? 6 months, a year? How long did it take you to recover?
Quite a long time. Yeah, I think I was in the hospital for 6 months, and then I was. My mother was a nurse, so they were okay. They felt like she could take good care of us. So they released me to her care, but I was still at that point in a full body cast. So I had to be picked up and sort of carried around, and all of that. It was a very long recovery.
Wow, amazing. And then how then did that endear you to your parents? How did they handle all that?
It was a lot. I think I was pretty close to my parents anyway. My mum was. She was just a fierce woman. She was a fierce defendant of us. And, you know, lower socioeconomic, hardworking people, but just worked hard to give us every advantage, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Were you close to your parents?
Yes, my dad's still alive. My mother passed away about 10 years ago. But yeah, I was pretty close. I mean, I feel indebted to them. That they were great parents. Yeah.
Awesome. And then how about your siblings? Do you have any siblings that are younger than you, or were you the last?
No, I was the last. You know, once they got it right, they said, "Yeah, that's enough."
And then how's your relationship with your older siblings?
We are. They are significantly older than me, and they're my half sisters and a half brother. So yeah, we talk. We're also scattered. So yeah, but yeah, we get on well.
Yeah, yeah. So tell us then a little bit about your life after, as you were recovering and afterwards. You finished grade school. I mean, obviously you were 1 year. You didn't even go to school, right? I mean,
yeah,
with all your injuries.
Yeah, no, I didn't go to school, but I did go. I think I recovered, not just physically, but I did pretty well at school. Once I got to intermediate, which you might call middle school.
Yeah.
Basically, from there, for whatever reason, I started to go off the rails in terms of my behavior. So I ended up getting in quite a bit of trouble at secondary school in particular. So I was expelled from 2 schools, and just for being generally a bad kid.
Yeah.
I just went off the rails. But it was literally right before I was expelled from my second school that I met my now wife, and I remember having a conversation with her because I was trying to tease her, I suppose, to get her attention. And I got to the point where I was just exasperated because I couldn't break her.
Yeah.
And I said to her, "What's different about you?" Because all the other kids I had no trouble getting under their skin.
Yeah.
But she just would laugh me off, you know. And I said, "What's different about you?" And she said words to the effect of, "Well, I've got Jesus. I don't really care what you say."
Oh, wow.
And I remember that just stunned me. And I remember and literally sitting down and thinking, wait, I thought I had Jesus, kind of by virtue of my citizenship. But the fact that she seemed to have him and I didn't, it really stunned me.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting down, sort of panning around, thinking about this, and then saw the associate principal coming to drag me out, and that was the end of my schooling.
Oh, wow.
Now, now I knew where she went to church, and about 6 weeks later, I was staggering past her church on a Sunday night, and the lights were on, and I wandered in, and I remember seeing all of these people who very obviously had what she had that I didn't have, but was so impressive to me. And then I stuck around, and I just I figured if there was sufficient proof for the resurrection, then I could pretty much accept everything.
Oh, wow. So you were thinking very apologetically, even as at that age.
Yes, I wanted it all to stack up.
Yeah.
I didn't want to just get in with a group of like impressive people and then find out that they had just built their whole life on something that was frivolous.
A hoax.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, so you have this bad car wreck. You recover fully over time. You do pretty good in elementary school, but when you get to junior high or middle school, you start making trouble. You get kicked out of 2 different schools, but the second school, you meet Dawn, your wife, your future wife.
Yes.
And so she makes an impression on you just about the time you get kicked out of another school.
Just at the right time.
Yeah. And so 6 weeks goes by, you go by her church accidentally and walk in, and it's a life changer for you.
And they had no, I don't think that they had a visitor like me for quite some time.
What kind of church was it?
It was a Presbyterian church. It was her family church.
I see.
Most of the people who were there had grown up there, and they would get, the odd visitor walk in. But I remember Dawn, my wife, was playing the drums, and she hopped off the drums. It was before the service started, so they were kind of practicing loosely. And then she came down to see me because she was surprised that I'd come. And the song leader got up at the beginning of the service and said words to the effect of, "Well, it's good to see so many familiar faces here," and an unfamiliar face, and then quickly called Dawn back as if she was in some sort of danger. But it was very impressive. What I struggled with there, full of these beautiful people who did a great job to accommodate me, but they didn't really understand me.
Right.
And it was hard to see a situation where I would be able to invite my friends along to it.
Yeah.
And around about that time, I met a youth pastor from C3, and I remember he invited me to play basketball. I was just, at a loose end in life generally. I was living out of home, and I was just getting ready to go into the army. That was the plan.
Yeah.
And I'd been accepted into the army. I was just waiting to sort of get in.
So by this time, you're 18 years old.
Yeah, 17, 18, yeah. And, but at the same time, so I remember he invited me to play basketball, and I thought, Christians play basketball? And I remember he talked in a way that I sort of understood it. He wasn't using Christian jargon, and so as much as this Presbyterian church was very influential early on, but a lot of the deeply impacting ministry happened in a C3 church, in a youth ministry. And that was really, I guess, the impetus that helped me to make a decision. June 6, 1999, I remember responding to the invitation. I was satisfied. Yeah.
Wow. At a youth meeting at this C3 church?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. Amazing. And how big was the church?
Well, actually, there was a move of God. Like I was saved in a move of God.
What do you mean by that?
We had these primal youth churches, which were characterized by young people leading young people. So you had these primal youth churches that were led by, people in their sort of early 20s. And one of the things about it that was remarkable is that we had so many youth. We had the largest youth ministry in New Zealand at the time, and they were all so hungry for God and receptive to God. And I didn't know any different at the time. I wish that I appreciated then just how special
that moment was.
Yeah. But I was saved into that moment.
Yeah.
And so it was a great time.
Yeah. We had a very similar situation here in the early 80s. There was a real move of God going on. And that's when I got saved back in 1983. And, charismatic churches were just, busting at the seams, people coming, lots of people getting saved, new music being birthed, and, music that was very gospel-centered. And so there was a real move of the Holy Spirit. But because I didn't have any context for it, I thought it was normal. It didn't seem like it was a move. It just seemed normal to me.
Yeah, you think it's normal until you don't have it any longer,
right.
and you want to get it back.
Yeah.
And it used to come so
and
easy.
That was the whole point. I mean, we, as we got into the later 90s, mid to late 90s, everything kind of began to plane smooth out. And really, there hasn't been a whole lot happen since that time. I mean, there have been churches that have come and gone. There have been music that's coming, a lot of great things. But in terms of a deep hunger for God and a deep desire to honor God with your life, we are anticipating that as we move forward.
Yes.
We want that.
Yes. It's like every Sunday or Thursday, we used to meet on Thursday, we used to meet on Sunday. Every Sunday, the altar would be full. So easy to give an altar call.
Yeah.
Because it didn't really matter what you said, people were coming.
Yeah.
And they were just hungry.
Yeah.
And it was a great time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you get saved on June the 6th, 99.
Yeah.
And I suppose by this time you're very involved in the church and the youth ministry. And
yeah, it replaced, because I had to get out of the scene that I was in, so it became my whole world, my whole life.
Wow.
So yeah, it really did. I threw myself into it.
And was Dawn prominently in the picture at that point?
Yeah, so sort of we genuinely started out as friends, and then that blossomed to be, we were more than friends. We dated because we were young when we first started dating. It took about 6 years for me to propose, but we were pretty much together. So she came over from her family church to the C3 church, and we basically became eventually youth pastors together. We got married in 2005, and so coming up on 20 years.
20 years.
Yeah. But I mean, she a big part of my testimony was I came across her, and she was the most impressive person that I'd ever met. She was a real Christian.
Yeah.
And still today, she's the most impressive person that I've met. She's a real Christian.
Wow.
I couldn't ask for a better wife or partner in ministry.
So I want to kind of get it straight in my head. So you get expelled, you meet her, you go to her church, youth pastor asks you to play basketball, you get saved, she joins the group, and you guys grow. And so Did you go back and get your high school education? Did you?
No, I just went straight to university.
Oh, okay.
So I went to university, funnily enough, and trained to be a teacher.
Yeah.
I remember it like, I mean, this is a...
This is so ironic.
yeah, I know,
right?
I know. And like I always talk about this, people have a hard time discerning the will of God. You know, I find it's easy when it's a right and a wrong. It's a choice between good and evil. It's sometimes trickier to discern when it's a choice between right and right, good and good, you know. So I kind of had the opportunity to, I could study to become a teacher, or I could go to what we call church planting school. So one would set me on a course of being in education. The other would set me on a course of ministry. And I prayed and I prayed, and I asked, you know, a couple of people what they think. One person said, you should go to ministry training school. The other person said, you should go to teachers college. So I was so confused. And then one day I felt like God say, just pick one.
Yeah.
You know, if the choice is between right and right, and you diligently give God the opportunity to speak or to intervene, and you still can't find yourself, you know, with a sense of what God wants to do, you know, when it's right and right, you can't go wrong.
Yeah.
And so, funnily enough, I said, okay, I'll go to teachers college, but I ended up in the ministry.
Wow.
But I don't view going to university as wasted.
No.
You know, like I learned a lot. It's been helpful, but God got me to where I needed to be.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And so you went to church planter school.
I went to university. I did some ministry training stuff through the Vineyard College as well. But
Is that the Vineyard out of California? Something?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so yeah, I did both.
Yeah.
But I ended up going to university for 3 years, and then basically straight out of university, we were offered a job to run the youth ministry that I had been saved into, which was called Primal Youth under Pastor Dean Rush. And we did that for a few years. And then eventually, that's when they asked us to go down to Christchurch.
Amazing.
Yeah, to plant a church.
And did you take a team when you went down there, or just you?
No, it was just us, but we did have a Primal Youth Church down there. So yeah, it was interesting. It was kind of a small group of people, a bizarre set of circumstances.
How so?
It was a complicated. It kind of wasn't really an established church. It was kind of we were pulling together some sort of loose strings, if you like, and so it had many of the complications of inheriting a church, but without any of the benefits. And yeah, it was tricky.
Yeah.
And but I mean, it endeared me to the people. You know, we met some lifelong friends there, and yeah, obviously had a very interesting 10 years down there. Yeah.
Now, Auckland and Christchurch, you compare and contrast the two. There's quite a bit of difference, right? I mean, it's
yeah. Auckland is I think more of an international city. It's more diverse. Christchurch, at its heart, it's a rural town, and it's quite conservative. Yeah, the further south you go, the more sort of conservative it becomes.
I see.
Now that has changed a lot, I think, as a result of the earthquake, because the demographic of Christchurch has changed for the better, I think.
I wanted to ask you about that earthquake. What year was that, and how did that impact sort of your life and your family, your ministry? I mean, it was a big deal. I remember that.
It was a big deal, yeah.
What year was that?
The first earthquake, there was a significant earthquake, and I believe it was 2010.
Yeah.
Sasha, our eldest, was 1.
Uh-huh.
It was actually her first birthday. So 2010, we woke up in the night, magnitude 7.1. We'd never been in an earthquake. We heard it before we felt it. So I was lying awake, and I remember hearing what I thought at the time was a very, very low-flying, very large plane overhead, and then started shaking. And that was the first earthquake. Now, we didn't have any fatalities. We had sizable aftershocks. Kind of felt like we dodged a bullet there.
Uh-huh.
But then around about in February 2011, we had a very significant earthquake that was closer to the city. The magnitude was lower, but it was at the wrong time of the day, 12:51 p.m.
Yeah.
And that caused a lot of casualties. A lot of the older buildings came down. One major building in town came down, and there were a number of fatalities.
Yeah.
And it was just a bizarre time to lead a church.
We talked before this podcast, and you were telling me that it totally destroyed your home.
We lost our home. We weren't as affected as some. It just so happened that there was some damage that we could have lived with, but
broken foundation.
Yeah. Just right at the lower end of what they would consider we need to repair this. We actually had an assessor come in to have a look at a shared fence that we had with our neighbours that had broken, and he said, well, while I'm here, let me have a look around. And he said, well, look, your house is actually on a slope. We didn't know. I mean, we were abseiling down the hallway every day for breakfast, but we hadn't recognised the damage that had been done.
Yeah.
And they just said, look, it'll be easier for us to knock this down and rebuild it.
Wow.
So that was a slight inconvenience.
Did the church mobilize during this time? I mean, what do you do when you have an earthquake?
Well, a lot of people, they ask me in that time, were people's hearts, turned back to God? Did they flood in to ask big questions? And the answer is no, not really, because what happens is people start groping for the familiar. So if they played golf, they really play golf. They get out there and play more golf than ever because they're just looking for familiar. The people who were in the church, they really plugged in. So in some ways, it was the best of times and the worst of times.
Yeah.
The community, the fellowship, the worship, like all of that was intensified. But we started losing people steadily.
Yeah.
Because they were leaving the city.
Yeah.
And that really messed with me as a church planner.
Sure.
Because I had this view, it was a naive view, that if you do the right things and you don't do the wrong things, then growth happens. But then something like this happens, and we lost easily a third, maybe up to a half of the people that we had gathered over a period of 6 months. We just watched this church that
They
we'd
moved.
worked. They just moved.
Where did they move to?
A lot of them moved to Australia.
Yeah.
A lot of them moved to other parts of the South Island because you had two things. You had the anxiety that was caused by the earthquakes. So for me, there were thousands of earthquakes, tremors. There were maybe 4 or 5 of them that I was mindful of. Where are the kids? Are they, the rest of them were just minor. But for some people, every time there was a shake, there was trauma. And the kids in particular, were terrified. So we lost a lot of young families who would move out of Christchurch. The other thing is there was a significant housing shortage.
Wow.
Because so many of the houses came down. We lost whole suburbs.
Wow.
Whole suburbs just became green space. So there was a massive housing shortage.
Wow. Wow, that was a real crisis.
And I don't think they have fully recovered yet.
Yeah.
It's taken a long time for them to rebuild.
So is that what caused your migration back to Auckland?
No, I think by that point our kids were at an age where we felt like if we were going to make a move, it needed to be then, because it would be unfair, not impossible, but it would be difficult for us to move them once they got into high school, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So we'd done 10 years, and we just thought, are we going to do another 10? Dawn and I had aging parents and kids who had cousins up there, and we just thought probably a good time to
and when
move.
you went back, did you plant a church from scratch, or did you
No,
take a church
I
over?
actually took over the church the C3 church that I was in when I got saved. Yeah, so I had maintained a good relationship with the pastor there, and this is Wayne Pete.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I went from Wayne's church when I took up the job coming out of university. I went over to Dean's with Wayne's blessing, but Dean's got a lot of years left in him,
Yeah, right.
But Wayne was a bit older, and he was looking to transition. He's still on staff with us today. He's a great staff member.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was ready to transition. We were thinking at the time that we might relocate outside of New Zealand to be more involved with the global stuff. But New Zealand's a great place for kids to grow up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we just decided that we'd stick around until they'd grown up at least.
Well, I want to shift a little bit because I want to make sure that we talk about this. You then really moved from a local church pastor then to begin to have some oversight. When did you go multi-campus after you got there, or was it
in Auckland?
Yeah.
Yes, we went multi-campus. We were one church in one location. But kind of where we are, we're in a bit of a cove. And we figured out that most of the new development was happening further out. And we wanted to stay within East Auckland, but we figured that if we were going to reach some of those people that were moving into these new developing suburbs, we were going to need to establish a location further out. So our location is, we've got our pre-existing one in Highland Park.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then about another 20 minutes, sort of south, we have one in Ormiston. And then for many, many years, we've had a missions focus in Fiji. And so we formalized that by kind of working with a great couple of pastors, Ben and Libby Morrison, and what they were doing with particularly students in Fiji. So we kind of have our location in Suva, Fiji.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
How far is that from Auckland?
it's about a 3-hour flight.
Right.
Yeah. So we probably get there a couple of times a year.
Yeah.
We try to be very empowering of Ben and Libby. We I would say we treat them a little bit differently because we just can't expect them to kind of function like our East Auckland locations do. They have a longer leash, if you like, and they really, what we want them to do is take our culture and translate it into a Fijian context, which I don't know how to do.
Yeah.
So, but they are the experts at it.
I see. And so, do you do a video feed with them on some regular basis, or how do they get the input from you?
We have a weekly meeting with them. I try to get over and spend time with the young leaders there and with them. They're obviously on all of our comms. We try to collaboratively prepare sermons, so we are saying the same thing across all of our locations. But we started, we would start by every time we begin a new series, we would do a video message that kind of provides some orientation. Then we thought, like coming out of COVID, people don't love sitting watching a screen.
Yeah.
So we just thought, we'll just do a brief introduction, from me. But then now, I don't even really think we do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you found out over time you've developed an amazing leadership where you can go from a single campus to multi-campus. You take over oversight of the Pacific region for C3. How did all that come to pass? And then where did you make the jump from that to where you are today?
Oh, so that was in 2015. So I was still in Christchurch, and Pastor Dean Rush, he was doing it, but he'd kind of come to the end of wanting to do it. I think he just wanted to focus on other things. And I, to be honest, I wasn't that ambitious for the role. I felt like I was too young. I felt like I wasn't well positioned to do it. And I initially sort of rebuffed the idea. And then I heard that if I didn't do it, there was a possibility that we might be overseen by an Australian. And I thought, we can't have that.
That can't happen.
That can't happen.
No, right.
Yeah, that can't happen.
Yeah.
So I remember saying, if Pastor Phil is interested in having this conversation, I will. I'm happy to have that conversation.
No.
And I remember Pastor Phil calling me, and I'd rehearsed that. I was going to say, if you're happy to have this conversation, I'm happy to have that conversation. And then I thought I'd jump on a plane and would go and sit down for these intensely long meetings and whatever. So I hadn't really planned my strategy for that conversation. So I remember saying to Pastor Phil, if this is a conversation you want to have, then I'm willing to have that conversation. And then there was a 3-second silence, and he said, that's a conversation we're having right now. And I was like, oh. So I hadn't rehearsed all of my objections, and he pretty quickly. He easily kind of
Move past that.
yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And so at that point, I was like, oh, okay, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And that brought me into the global picture. I think what has happened, and I've just concluded this year, handed it over to a wonderful couple, Pastor Tamati and Tess Cameron.
Yeah.
And they've just started to take on the regional directorship.
How many churches in that region?
It's about 60.
About 60.
Somewhere between 60 to 65.
So it includes the New Zealand churches and the outlying islands.
Yes, New Zealand, currently, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea, Vanuatu, Samoa, and Fiji.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, and these guys, they'll do a great job.
Mm-hmm.
My focus, I think what has happened over the last several years is I've become more involved and more passionate about the global church. And so my focus now is on our global movement.
Yeah. And what is your title and exactly what are you doing for the global movement?
I think my primary title, of course, is I'm a senior pastor of a local church.
Yeah.
And then beyond that...
And a husband to Dawn and a father to 3 kids.
Beyond that, I'm an exec team member. I think the portfolios may change. But yeah, I mean, I've just try to get around the world. We run these express courses. I'm currently involved in that pretty heavily.
And some people listening won't be familiar with that. Just what is it briefly? Because I know we've had several of our folks go through an express course.
Express is one of our tools for training. So we've got a leadership pathway. Express is a part of that pathway. It's a leadership intensive aimed at transformation for potential church planters, for senior pastors, for people in our movement who need enculturation of what C3 is all about, and also for key team leaders. And it's developed by Pastor Mark and Bernie Kelsey over many years. But, we're trying to work in with the regions to have this as a part of their training strategy. It's an intensive, it's holistic, so it's not just focused on providing information, but it's also, developing mental health, emotional health, physical health. We see a lot of people all around the world that have breakthroughs, with these events. So, and so we're doing more of them all around the world than we ever have. Yeah. And, it'll always be a part of our training strategy. Yeah.
What's the biggest challenge you face with the express world? What?
It's probably pulling them off in the developing world. Because, like a key part of it is we all come together, we stay together, we eat together, and to do that we've got one happening right now in Pune in India as we speak. We've got one coming up in Zambia. And just pulling that off, it's an expensive exercise. It's worthwhile, but just coming up with the funds to do it can be a challenge.
Just all the logistical thing, getting their people there, feeding them,
all of that.
All that, yeah. Amazing. Well, as you're traveling, as you're seeing the church through the lens of so many different cultures, what do you see God doing, and how can we participate in that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm particularly focused on C3. I have very little to do with anything outside of C3, not because I don't love the church in all of its forms and expressions, but just because C3 occupies so much of my time, happily. happily. And we are in a really interesting place as a movement right now. It's interesting. We started out as a movement, as a local church in the northern beaches of Sydney.
Mm-hmm.
And we became a local church with a movement. And now we have transitioned and are learning how to do this better.
Mm-hmm.
We have become a movement of local churches.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we're really looking to emphasize and benefit from and appreciate is the globalness of our movement.
Mm-hmm.
I get to see, we have very broad, agreeable cultural distinctives that can be interpreted and contextualized all over the world. So one of the great joys for me is that I get to see what C3 looks like all over the world.
Yeah.
And it looks different, but it feels the same.
Wow.
And I love that.
Yeah.
So, like, my burden for me is I want to try to connect these C3 pastors with each other so they can benefit from each other. So there can be an iron sharpening iron.
Yeah.
And so I feel like we're becoming more connected, we're becoming more unified, and we're becoming more appreciative of the globalness of our movement.
Yeah.
I did a presentation in Singapore at our global conference, which was a magnificent celebration of our global movement,
Mm-hmm.
very intentionally.
Yeah.
And I did a presentation to say the C3 that I see is as much African as it is American. Now, it's as much American as it is African.
Mm-hmm.
It's as much Asian as it is Australian.
Mm-hmm.
And that, because when we started out being a local church with a movement, weirdly, a lot of those churches felt a kind of pressure to feel like a church from the northern beaches of Sydney,
Yeah.
where
see
they
that.
were,
Yeah.
which was not what they needed
I
to
think
be.
even we had a little bit of that. I mean, are we going to have to switch to skinny jeans and holes in our jacket? And the answer is, of course not.
No.
But there was a little bit of that sense of that feeling because all the leaders most of the leaders were coming sort of out of that kind of culture.
Right.
And but I what you're talking about has been. I mean, that obviously has been happening.
That's right. Yeah. Which is great, and that's what we want, is to say, okay, we're here in Dallas, Texas. Let's take these broad, agreeable cultural distinctives of a C3 church and say, now, what does that look like in Dallas, Texas? And it's a great thing to watch, and that's an exciting conversation to have.
Yeah. I think the nature of our movement, and I love what you said, a movement of local churches, is the camaraderie, the relational strength that we have. Because really, if we lose that, we don't really have a movement anymore.
That's right.
I mean, that to me is what is so cementing and bringing us together and bringing that camaraderie and that friendships and those, so that when we do occasionally get together as a whole global movement, we have friends all over the world.
That's right. Yeah,
and
it's a special thing.
That is a very special thing. Yeah. Well, hey, Steve, it's been great having you. Thank you for being with us this weekend. Thank you for sitting for this podcast, and just thank you for all that you're doing to make our C3 world really a fantastic world. And because you really are a master at connecting people and bringing a depth of relationship to our friendships that really hold us together. and really keep us together. So thank you very much.
Thank you. That's very kind, and thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, look, I am so grateful to all of you who have joined us today for this podcast. If this is some kind of content and conversation that you like and you're interested in, love to have you just click the like and maybe subscribe, and we'll bring you a new episode every week. Pastor Steve, thank you for being with us, and God bless all of you, and thank you for being with us.